No matter which social media expert you follow, I'm sure at one point you've heard them say, tell more stories across social media. And you're like, what does that even mean? And you also might be wondering why and how do I do that? So today I want to talk to you guys about 3 different reasons why you should be leaning more into storytelling on social media and give you a couple examples of how to accomplish that in your business. So number 1, this one might feel a little counterintuitive and might be a little difficult at first. Believe me, I'm still working on this myself, but really gearing away from tips and tricks and leaning more into storytelling. So for example, in this Instagram post right here, I could have just told people a couple of tips and tricks about content batching and promoted my freebie at the end. And instead what I did is I decided to tell a story of how I created this freebie. I hadn't promoted it yet, but yet I had 60 signups. So I told a story, and along the way, they learned some strategy. They learned a couple tips and tricks. That's how you would still kind of involve this in your content, and then promoted my freebie at the end. And ultimately, I had 200 additional signups after just posting that one Instagram post so that people get my freebie. And again, that might not seem like that grand of a story. It doesn't always have to be. I just simply shared my perspective of how I was kind of amazed and shocked that there was a freebie that I created, people were downloading it, and I hadn't even promoted it yet. And to lean into a couple more examples here. So I used to be known as the Canva Queen, and I would literally give away tutorials and hacks and tips and tricks on how to create content in Canva. And listen, while there's nothing wrong with that, and certain people really can use that to their advantage, it didn't align with where I wanted to be on Instagram and the audience that I wanted to attract. Believe me, there are plenty of business owners and content creators out there that are actually the Canva queens, and I would rather follow them instead of trying to produce that content. But for me, why I've decided to kind of get away from those like tips and tricks and lean more into storytelling is because I want to be seen as a thought leader, and some of my offerings and services really lean into that as well. So by providing tips and tricks, I'm kind of attracting a newer, less seasoned business owner, and instead leaning into more of these thought leader storytelling pieces, I'm giving people my expertise and kind of showing them that I am a leader in this space. And don't get me wrong, I still give away tips and tricks because they are great pieces of content that do foster quite a bit of engagement. But specifically for what I teach and what I sell, by giving away too many tips and tricks, I'm adding to the noise of social media. And there's a lot of contradicting tips and tricks out there from other social media educators, and I don't want to add to that noise. I don't want to add to that overwhelm of like, what this person said this and you're saying this. So I really try, and no matter the tips and tricks I give, is always bring it back to my thought, my opinion, my experience, and say you can try it another way if you want. So for you, let's say you're a hairstylist and you do these beautiful updos. Rather than just like posting a tutorial of how you did that updo, I would rather see you do something like show the process of doing the updo. Let's say you did that updo for a bride. Tell a little bit of her story and like what inspired her to do this really fancy updo for her beach wedding. Tell the story of how she became your client. Give people a little bit more insight and information because they're still getting that tips and tricks by watching you do the updo, but they're also getting a little bit of that background story. Same for social media managers out there. Let's say you're like, hey, I tried out this new post and it got this type of engagement. You could give a tutorial, you could give tips and tricks, but what's even more powerful is tie it back to your client's story. So let's say you tried a new type of carousel and you're like, it got more saves than likes. Tell the story of how you and your client collaborated on that post to show her expertise as like this organizing queen, and maybe how it helped her sell more products through her affiliate linking, so that the story of how you created that piece of content is just as important as the tips and tricks that you're giving. Reason number 2 to lean into more storytelling is it does provide social proof, and it helps show that you can get results and provide a transformation. This is the ultimate way of selling without selling. And essentially social proof is just like, let's say you go look at Amazon and you read the reviews. That's social proof. It's just seeing that other people have bought this, other people have experienced this, and this is how they feel about it. The same can be done for your brand or your business without saying, here's a testimonial, here's a review. So prime example here, if you haven't heard of her, jump over on TikTok and look her up. Her name is Alex Earl. And basically she just tells stories as she's doing her makeup, kind of documents her kind of everyday life as a college student at the University of Miami. And while she often has some like wild nights and likes to party, she's telling like all these like intimate thoughts and intimate stories about her life. But the minute she might tell a story about a hangover that she's having and she tried this new electrolyte drink and it made her feel 10 times better, She would be telling a story, but a ton of people would immediately go and buy that product because they trust her through that storytelling. And you can apply the same thing to your business. So for example, I can tell a story about how I helped create a content system for my client that helped them save 10 hours a week because they don't have to worry about creating content. This system kept them organized and just made content creation a lot easier. And now I might find new clients because they are experiencing those same problems. They read or listened to that story and realize they are in the same situation and they want similar results because they're experiencing the same problems. And again, it helps me sell without selling. When I talk about, hey, I helped them save 10 hours through my process, that is so much more powerful than saying, here you go, buy my course called The Content System. Which one are you more likely to buy from? You're gonna see yourself in that story versus me just trying to put out a promotional piece of content to sell my latest course. Maybe you are a jewelry designer and you create these beautiful custom jewelry pieces. And one day this woman came to you and she recently lost her dog and she wanted some of the ashes put into a beautiful ring. So maybe what you do for a piece of content is you are recording the behind the scenes process of you creating that ring. Typically what small business owners will do is they'll put text on screen or do a voiceover and talk about how they created the ring. I used this kind of silver. I used this tool, which is not going to help you sell that ring. Instead, you can take those same clips and that same video and tell the story through a voiceover or text on screen of the woman that is purchasing that piece from you. That story in and of itself is going to bring in emotions and it's going to sell your custom commissioned jewelry pieces without you having to be like, hey, I now have my custom commissions open again. Waitlist is open, book now. People are less likely to buy from that. But if you tell them a story, they can see themselves in that story and or they can really admire the piece of work that you're creating instead of just like hearing you ramble about the tools that you're using. And reason number 3 of why you should lean more into storytelling, it's just more interesting, period. Stories help paint a picture. And even if you feel like your story isn't that interesting, there's always a beginning, middle, and end. And it's full of conflicts and climax and resolution. And you might be thinking like typical fairy tale type of stuff, but no, this is also true for your business in the products that you create, the services that you give, and the offers that you have available for people. This boils down to allowing a potential customer to see themselves in the story you're telling so that they ultimately might make a purchase from you. It is so much harder for somebody to see themselves in, let's go back to the jewelry example. You post a photo of the done piece and you say, my custom commissions start at $2,000. It's hard for somebody to be like, I don't want to spend $2,000. Why would I spend $2,000? Versus if they watch that video, listen to that woman's story, they can see themselves in it and they are more likely to make a purchase than a random photo or a graphic that you put up. So you should, yes, diversify your content. You can still give out the tips, the tricks, and the hack to really grow your audience and boost engagement, but stories are ultimately going to help you convert that audience into actual buyers. And now that you've learned a little bit more about storytelling in social media, I want to kind of dive deeper into this type of theory, and you guys can check out this video where we take one specific content idea and turn it into 4 social media posts using some of the tactics from this video. And again, don't forget to leave your questions below and hit that subscribe button. I will see you next week.